So you've got the bottom leg straight, the roller's just above the hip but below the ribs, and then you've got a choice. So I'm on my left side here, so my left leg is straight, and if I want to get more to the side here, I bring the knee all the way over the top. I'm not moving the roller at all. Literally, the roller stays in the same position. And the more I bring my knee over, the more I feel that on the side of the muffin top. If I bring my knee up and lean back a bit, I get closer to the spine with the release. So you can see my upper body going back, and what that does is obviously that takes the weight closer to the spine. Now in all of this, you don't want to go past a 7 or 8 out of 10 on your discomfort level, really. So I'm leaning back over the roller. So I'm kind of arching my back now over the roller, as opposed to when I've got my knee here and it's targeting this bit, as opposed to closer to the spine around the back here. So this is an area, and if you want, you then just lift yourself up and move the roller a tiny bit towards the hip, and you'll feel that change the position of where it's working. So we're working within a really small area here, but changing the position of the roller fractionally and then moving the body will kind of tell you or give you the chance to release a slightly different area. So there's a lot of very subtle changes with when you're rollering that you can make to basically just hit a slightly different area, but you're not really moving out of this band on that side. So in terms of time, if I'm doing this, I spend 1 to 2 minutes on it, depending on how tight it feels. So I've just swapped over now. So my right leg is straight, my left leg is bent. I'll change around for the sake of the camera so you can see me slightly better. So again, this time, just swap sides. You can see the roller, and from this angle, you can see when I go further back over the roller, that's going to get closer to the spine.
So you try and relax down onto the roller, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my weight, some of my weight in my elbow.
Yeah.
But how much, if it's kind of spread between my elbow and on the roller. I'm not like I'm like that where there's no.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you need to be able to move your body kind of freely. And if you look at the second image of me face down, you can kind of see that I'm not moving that much, but as I lean back, I go more over the roller when I lean back, and that just gets closer to the spine, basically. So the next one I do after this, because it's also sequential, is now start to work through the middle back. So you place it along the bottom of your back, just kind of sit on it. You can put your hands across your chest, and then you just roll down a bit. So we're now working this part, middle part of the back, either side of the spine, because my knees are facing forward. And then if you want to increase the pressure and move further up the back, you just lift your hips up. Now, whether or not you put your hands round here to support your neck or round the front, a lot of people in this position like to support their neck. And now I'm working the middle part of my back between kind of my ribs and underneath my shoulder blades. So you can put if it's sensitive, put your elbows down. If you want a bit more pressure, then you just lift your hips up and move down the back. So this again goes back to the 7, 8 out of 10. How much weight you want to put through it. If you want to put more weight, more pressure, you lift your hips. If you don't, you keep your hips on the floor. And then you just move down the further down till you get to the middle of your shoulder blades. To get to the top part though, if you want to get into the tops of the shoulders, you have to actually lift your hips off the floor to do that. So again, everybody's kind of different on how much pressure. This is if you're just starting out doing it, this is a good position because the hips are on the floor. You still got some weight in your back, and you can get down in between the shoulder blades. That's, so a lot of the time when you get closer up, people's necks are a bit sore. One of the nicest things you do in roller, I don't know how much you do, it's actually just use it as a kind of neck rest where you just actually put it down on the floor. If your neck's sore, you can just actually turn your head, and the weight of your head pressing into the roller will massage your neck. You might need to pull the roller down a bit, but it is, you know, it's quite nice for kind of massaging the back of the skull, like that, if you don't want to do anything at all. But if you want to try and get on the tops of the shoulders, like here, this is where it becomes quite a bit harder, because if you want to do that, you have to really lift your hips up high in more like a bridge position, and then turn the hips to get into the shoulders. It's a much harder position to get into that.
I think I'll stick with my neck.
Yeah, you may do. It's quite hard because you really have to lift your hips. You see here when I'm doing it, I'm lifting and I'm turning my hips to get into the shoulder, which is quite hard work. So that's where it can be a bit tougher. Right, we're going to turn around and start working on the front of the leg now. This one's one that if you've been sat all day, it's probably nearly everybody that we deal with. You want to try and position the roller at the top of the thighs here. So I'm going to position it on my right thigh and put my left leg out to the side. So you can't see the roller now. I'm going to swap sides so you can. So that is just below my hip, and now I'm working on the top part of my thigh. This bit's normally pretty sensitive on most people, so
I can feel that.
Yeah, this is probably the one where, because of sitting, everybody's top of your thigh, this bit of the thigh is involved with lifting the leg.
Yeah.
So when you lift it up like that, and then, but also sitting at this point here, from basically your pelvis down, these muscles here is what gets tight from sitting. So when you lie, your weight, you can put all your weight by taking your leg off, which is probably too much. The safer one to do is where I've got my leg out to the side here, and this is just working on the top part of the quads. Now, again, quite a lot of weight is going through my elbows. I'm not putting all my weight onto that one leg. I'm taking some weight through the elbow. So this one's, I've now got both legs balanced, which would probably be too much pressure for you to do, but you can do that if you wish. If you want to get the front, then hips are flat. If you want to go on the side, which I'm sure you've probably heard of the IT band, this is probably the most painful one you could do, where you go on the side and you work down the length of the muscle. So that's where taking more weight through your elbow and your upper body comes into it, because this is probably the outside of the leg is what we never stretch at the end of sessions, walking, running, whatever. So the reason it gets so tight is because it's so difficult to stretch. And the only way to do it is by kind of using your own body weight. So try that. But if you try that, you might end up having to do it like this, with both hands, taking your body weight and then moving slowly down the outside like that, because you need to put as little pressure as possible, because it's normally too painful to be able to do it.
It is.
Normally. So you kind of have to, like, you can see I've got nearly all my weight in my hands whilst I'm putting a little bit of weight through that outside. So you've got to take
It's painful, isn't it?
yeah. This is, you know, what I would say 95%, probably 98% of people don't do is try and release the tension in the outside of the legs, because it's the sort of thing that builds up over years through walking, running, cycling, all sorts of general sports that or activities that, because there's no real obvious stretch, no one works on this unless they get a massage or someone forces them like this to do some foam rollering. And even though I've probably taught this to hundreds of clients over the years, I'd probably say
One that
two or three of them probably do it now.
Well, it is painful.
Yeah, it is.
Well, that's it. There's only, I always just describe it as only painful and excruciating. And unfortunately, when it's excruciating, that's probably the time that you should be doing a bit of it. It depends. Sometimes in a massage, the massage therapist will work a bit on your IT band, but normally they tend to leave it out because the client will hit the roof and not appreciate it. Would prefer to have their back massaged than have their IT band massaged. So enough of that. I'm going to move on to the calves, another area of the body that tends to get left out quite a bit and is often tight in people. And that's you place one leg on the roller. Sometimes, depending on how tight your calves are, this is always an interesting one to do, is that some people can't cope with putting the other leg on top and very gently moving down from the ankle down towards the knee. So you can probably see here that I'm pushing it with my hands and then working all the way as close as I can get to the knee from the ankle. So if you want to get more pressure, you lift up the body and that will push weight down into it. But a lot of the time people don't need it, just the leg itself is good enough. You've got three, let me change the angle, three lines in your calf, kind of the inner line, and then the inner line. If you see my foot, my foot position is straight there. If my foot is turned in, you work like the inside of the calf. If the foot is turned out, you work the outside bit of the calf. So again, the calves, you might find, depending on how you put your foot down on the floor, that your inner calf is more tight than the middle part, but it varies from person to person.
It's all horrible.
Even with
Very
a massage,
common.
it's horrible, but it was painful last night.
Yeah, well, tight calves, to be fair, again, it's another one of those muscles that doesn't get as much stretching as it should do.
Yeah.
We tend to token stretch the calf, and yet the calf, whether or not you cycle or run or walk even, does a lot of work because it's responsible for doing that.
Yeah.
So flexing and
Yeah.
extending the foot means the calf muscle, especially if you're cycling or running, does a lot of work. So it gets it doesn't get the number of minutes of stretching it should. So that's why often people struggle with calves. And then it's simple things like if you've injured your ankles in the past, that will put
I have.
potentially more weight on one side of the foot, which then leads to obviously more tightness in one side of the calf. So quite complicated reasons as to why you can end up with tight calves.
I've had enough of calves.
Sorry?
I've had enough of calves.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
painful.
when I used to run a lot, I suffered so badly from sore calves, either during the run or afterwards. It was always something that I had to work on a huge amount and to try and stop the discomfort. So yeah, swapping between the two, probably, you know, if I was kind of breaking up the time, I would spend the most time on this part of your legs, your thighs and your hip flexors, and then also your calves. One last one, which again, people don't do too much of, and that's the bum muscle one. So, you know, the stretch that we all do at the end of the session, well, you can kind of sit on the roller and find the bit where, and you'll find it quite quickly when you just kind of sit on it and roll it back. You'll feel like a ridge in your bum, and then you'll feel like a area where the roller will go into.
Yeah.
You can get a bit more targeted by dropping the knee. So again, you kind of turn the position. So I'm on my left bum cheek at the moment, and the more I kind of dip that left side, the more I can get into that kind of grooved area.
So is that more the glutes?
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, it's a piriformis.
Yeah.
The more you can turn like this, I mean, kind of exaggerating, but if you do that, you'll kind of find that area that's uncomfortable. There's kind of a bony ridge bit in the middle that you can get into when you turn.
Fall off.
Yeah, you might fall off it too. But if not, just doing it feet down like this, you'll still, and moving your hips from side to side, you can still get some release through the bum muscles. So again, they're ones that do a lot of work but don't necessarily get as much stretching as they need. So with, you know, and any given day when you kind of go through this routine, generally the tightest bits are upper back and front of the thighs, and that comes from when you've been sat at desk all day. But you know, some days your calves might be tighter if you've done a long walk or exercised, or, you know, general rule is hips and upper back are probably the areas that are going to be tightest. Okay, all right, and then I'll show you one last one, and this might be, again, a very painful one because it's not an area we stretch very well generally, and that is underneath the arms. So you put the roller down, but you basically place the roller in the gap of the armpit, and like you were doing with the first one where you lean your body back, you kind of do the same thing. You don't need to move the roller much. Just lying, if you get it in this gap here, will probably be quite painful. You won't even need to move much. Is that pretty uncomfortable?
Yeah. Horrible.
Yeah. Another one of the areas, because again, we sit there in front of a computer, hands in front of us, it just gets tight. You know, it's not an easy area to stretch. And then depending on if you want to go lower than the area, you just bring the roller like 0.5 centimeter down and apply the pressure again. And then you can move it down a little bit more, and then you'll basically come to the ribs, which obviously is too far. And then if you want to go up closer to the arm, then you go past that initial gap. So you've got a, you know, kind of distance of about that to cover. But depending on tightness, you'll one bit might be quite a bit more painful than the other, but normally the whole area is pretty tight. So, and then swap over to the other side and you can figure it out. I mean, like I said, with all of this stuff, less pressure over a longer time is better. If you're wincing, probably using too much pressure. So, like you said at the start, Steph, if you can breathe through it, you'll get a better release. If you're like, oh, that hurts so much, that's probably, you need to figure out a way of putting less weight through the area. But I mean, I can only say that over time, if it hadn't been knowing how to roller regularly and doing it every day, I would have ended up with a lot more injuries and discomfort than without it. It's just kind of learning to use the right amount of pressure for you.
Yeah.
And less pressure is better than going, oh, like that, you know, which is, you know, which can be done quite easily. So the skill lies over time in learning to not use too much pressure and release it more gently than harshly. But it can really help if you don't, as I said, do it too hard. If you batter it, you can, a bit like when someone massages you, if you use loads of pressure, you will bruise yourself.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is okay at certain points, but when you're starting out, you're much better off using less pressure than over a longer time than you are lots and lots of pressure. So, okay.
I think it'll be good for the thighs. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
try and release
I mean,
them.
2 areas: fronts of the thighs,
Yeah.
and across the
neck.
lower, yeah, lower back, mid back. Most of the time with computers, it's across here.
Yeah.
We look down and forward at the computer. And then
that's why I found that one actually really helpful, because that links into the trapezius, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we don't, there aren't many stretches apart from kind of hanging from bars or things like that will really stretch those areas nicely. You need, I mean, I've got my wife's got a fitness pole in the front room, something like that you can hang on to and let your weight fall, will then stretch this area. But that, you know, unless you've got like banisters or a bar, it's pretty difficult to do. So but yeah, that's about the only other way of doing that really nicely. Okay, so
thank you very much.
No
Thanks,
worries.
Rob.
I will see you guys at the next session.
Yeah.
Not
Have a good weekend.
Rob.
Sorry?
I'll talk to you tomorrow, I think. I've got an
Yes,
appointment.
yeah, we're
with you
booked in.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Sorry, Steph.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you later.
See you later. I'm not booked in, but I think I need to be booked in for Saturday. In the round.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I can
Is it
do
still
that.
going to be in the park?
Yeah, still in the park. Yeah, still in the park on Saturday. So
Is that
I shall
9?
8:45. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shall put you in for that.
Lovely. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Cheers.